Now we're going to, I'll pass over to Josh. This is going to be an excellent talk about behavioral analysis using DNS and network traffic. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. All right, so I'm going to talk about this. It's a work in progress. I'm still doing stuff. I have code that I've released that you can play with at the end. So I'll walk through just my thought process and what I'm working on. So I'll give my history, because everyone does this. I worked at NASA helping build their security operations center. I worked there for about 5 years and took a break and went over to Mandiant, and then ended up going back to NASA for a little while, and then joined OpenDNS, and then they were acquired by Cisco. So I do DNS stuff and security research at Cisco Umbrella. And I've been doing security maybe 20 years or so. So when you think about behavioral analysis, you might think about like this kind of thing where you're tracking how a user browses a website, where they go, where they might click, where they might look, things like that. You might also, this is much more exciting stuff, you might look for weird behaviors in movement through traffic of people and things like that. But, oh, it's kind of cut off. Well, hopefully it's okay. I'm using a different slide mechanism because I'm using a Linux laptop, and that's exciting, I guess. So first we'll talk about some detection methods that we currently have, some just basic stuff. We've got IDS, antivirus, and people, of course. IDS is based on signatures. So this is a signature, looking for TCP traffic from external network to your internal network with a message. It's looking for PHP content and some regular expression stuff, but it's a rule that has been written to find stuff that you know exists already. Requires human intervention, so you need to see something that has already happened or know about something that could potentially happen and try to guess what's going to happen on the wire. So it catches known threats. It's not exactly predictive. That's what we're trying to do, is be predictive or at least be faster. Antivirus, of course, rule-based. It's late usually to the game because the new malware variants are always written and they have to be caught and classified, and signatures that have to be downloaded, things like that. It's host-based, so it looks for known threats. We're working with things like CSV files, and I'll be showing you some examples of that. PCAP files, I do that a little bit. I'm still working on that. Active Directory logs, I tackle that just a little bit. Proxy logs, DNS logs, any kind of logs I can get. Typically, when I get a log file, sometimes I don't have the wire, I'm not on the wire, but I get a log file from some company. I might get it in a CSV, or it might give it to me in like Excel spreadsheet, which is terrible. And there's some things you can do that kind of gets an idea of things. I can kind of get a count of how many visits to a certain domain, a bunch of domains you get, or like, I don't know, I can kind of graph that, get an idea of what's happening inside that environment. And it's not too great, as I'll show in a little bit, when it's huge. But so one of the things you want to do is you want to try to, like when you're looking through that CSV or through that log file, you want to find normal. So define normal so you can kind of clear it out of there. So how do you find it? Sorry, this text is small, but it's just a bunch of domains. They're all suspicious. They're DNS tunneling domains. And you just watch it and kind of scroll through. But you may have something more like this where it's somewhat normal looking traffic going over your network or in that log file or whatever. And then occasionally there's a weird domain like that long DNS tunneling domain. And then, of course, like, how do you find that in this kind of thing when it's that? And I spend a lot of time dealing with this kind of thing. I pull log files from the resolvers of OpenDNS. I just, it's terrible. You've probably all done it. Well, how do you find it in that CSV file? And they're all different too. So one of the first things I tried was I'll count the number of times a domain is seen. I'm so sorry that it's cut off. If this bugs you, I can always adjust it, and it'll be a little weird for me, but I could probably do it. But we'll see. So I on this one particular log file, I don't remember where I got this, I'm counting the number of domains. For example, I'm looking at Facebook, and maybe I'm getting all the subdomains of Facebook, and I'm just counting those. Maybe I'll graph that just to get an idea of stuff that's not really that useful. I might count other domains just to see what's in there. There's a couple mistakes. Anyway, but I'll remove what I think is normal. So maybe it's above a certain threshold of visits. Look at domains visited just once is what I want to try. So I'm left with this slightly smaller list. It's still difficult. And I'm going to show like the manual process that we all do. So say I grab a random selection from that list, and I've got this, and I just look at it, and my gut says, these highlighted ones, they probably aren't bad. So I'm going to remove those. These highlighted ones, they aren't really bad. I'm going to remove those ones too. So I'm left with these so far. I look at this one. Maybe I visit it in Tor, or I go check it out in one of the many ways you can check the domain out, and I see it's some kind of healthcare site. So I'm just going to remove that. And I look at this. I can see there's a default Apache page. I do some searching. VirusTotal, someone in VirusTotal thought it was bad, but it's SonicWall something. So SonicWall. So I'll just cross that out. I have this mom.me. It's a parenting blog. Doesn't mean it's not bad, but I mean it could be compromised. I'm just kind of clearing domains out. So I've got this one. I'm unable to connect. There's no HTTP content. Maybe I scan it for other things, but I just look it up. It's Microsoft. So look this up. Same thing. It's some kind of Verizon spam thing. Maybe that's bad to you. I don't know. I don't really care. So got this one. No page, no content. Look it up. There's a little bit of something like from ThreatCrowd, but I'm not getting much else. I'm just going to cross it out. I have a feeling it's not bad, but not npest.net. It's forbidden. That doesn't mean it's bad or good or anything. It's just there's no content there. But looking at it, like just to Google, I can get some hits all of a sudden, like on malware.com, and there's some files associated with it, like a hybrid analysis and things like that. So that's something. You can see it's been identified. This is using another source by various AV vendors as malicious. VirusTotal sees all these URLs that look just like Locky, what Locky would do. And you can see it's using Investigate, which is like a Cisco thing, or previously OpenDNS thing. You can see there's a spike in traffic at one point, and before that there was nothing. So we got one. It's cool. It's a lot of work. The process is really tedious, and sometimes you can spend all day doing that. It's mostly manual. It requires expertise. So you need to know, you have to have that gut feeling. You have to have that, that's just a pain. So part of the solution is hopefully automation. I dream of programming myself out of a job. I started as a sysadmin a long time ago, and one day I'll be a sysadmin again, maintaining the machines that do whatever it is I do. So it'll be kind of sad, actually. I'll just probably quit and go to the forest and go there. Anyway, okay, so what do we automate? I'm going to be auto-cleaning logs and network streams, auto-process that stuff. I'm going to find ways to remove normal, like I said, without me having to do it like I did. I'm going to categorize things. That's a big part of analyzing the behavior of what's happening inside an environment. Save it to a workable whatever. I'm using MongoDB as my whatever. So, and I'll do some visualization using D3 and some JavaScript libraries and with a Flask framework. And all the stuff, like I said, is on GitHub. So I forget what that says. It's all different. So we're looking at different kinds of files. So DNS, we've got different timestamp formats. Items in multiple locations or different locations. When you're trying to pull them out from this raw text, it's a pain. So you still have to do some manual work initially. I'm working on the next step, which will be some natural language processing and some machine learning stuff, but I am still new to that. So at the moment, we still have to do some manual work. So if you want to try out my code at some point, you might have to move it around a little bit, but you'll see. Active Directory, you get stuff like this, and you can pull it out and then process it to get what you need, but you're going to have to do some manual work there. System logs, if you want to mess with that. I actually look at some auth logs coming up in a little bit. HTTP logs, if you want to analyze that kind of thing. There's plenty of services that will do this, but if you want to find behavior, maybe there's additional work there. So the manual process, as I've explained, needs to go away. So you want to use what makes sense to you. And like I said, this is Excel. So you want to pull in a huge file. This is probably only 300 megabytes at this time. So we wait, and you can see this. Well, actually, you can't see it, but the process, now it's over 100%. It wants to import it into multiple worksheets. So then you want to force quit Excel at that point. And move on to the next thing. So please don't give people log files in Excel. I mean, sales will always do it, so, but that's the way. R, which I would have liked to play around with a lot, but I have not been using it in this. It's a lot faster than what I've been using, which is Python. So I'm doing everything with Python and some shell scripting. But I also have some tools. I use Matplot to do some initial kind of graphing, and then I use pandas to kind of move my data around. Plotly I used initially. I've kind of stepped away from that, but I was using the offline version of Plotly, D3, C3, and one library I use heavily, I just started using a couple of weeks ago because I'm constantly working on this thing, was metrics graphics for some timeline visualization. So and there's some open source tools I'm using, and this is one thing that bothers me. I mean, I work for a big company, and I've worked for big companies, and they want to sell their product, and I believe you should be able to do all this stuff for free. You should be able to, it should be open source. Unfortunately, I'm still using some closed source stuff, but I'll get to that. And I'm working on trying to find sources for my data that is open. But I'm using PyASN, like an offline ASN lookup. I'd like to make it so that this is pretty much all offline once you've done an initial process of your logs. This is terrible, small. But it just gives you a view of, like, it looks up a domain, the IP it's sitting on, and the ASN that owns that IP. Handy for a quick lookup of stuff. Python Who is, I'm using NetworkX as well to graph things. So like in that exact same example, it doesn't matter what I'm typing there. It's going to pop up a little graph of the exact same kind of PyASN thing. So you can kind of see we're starting to get some visualization of what's going on with stuff. So if you have a whole bunch of this, maybe you can find that there's some weird anomalies in there. And there's ways to make this fancier. So I get fancier, but not as fancy as I could get yet. There's some paid tools. I'm using OpenDNS Investigate because I work there. So it's a valuable resource. It looks like this. And this is not a vendor talk, I'm just, so you get an idea of how it works. You can see all the traffic going through the resolvers. It's like 3% of the internet, maybe a little more than that now. You can get some other data like the email address that registered a domain. I don't know why I picked this domain, but you can get the IP it sits on, the IPs it sat on before, like some passive DNS kind of data. You can get the geo location, like who's been visiting it, and some information on them too. So it's cool. And you get co-occurring domains, things that are contacted at the exact same time or very similar, very close in time, which can help you find some interesting things about that domain and the domains it's connected to. And this is just the web interface. There's a whole API. So I use that heavily. This VirusTotal I'm using as well. You can send, if you do it free, you can send 4 requests a minute, which it's good for testing. But if you have the paid one, you can send as many as you want. I don't know what yeah, it's good. I have cool stuff. For example, if you use their web interface and you say you look for that same domain, I don't know why I picked it, but I should have picked an interesting domain. Maybe it was interesting to me. I don't know. You can go look at samples that are associated with the domain that maybe they were found there, or maybe they're calling out to there. I don't know. But you can call all this data, including other stuff like categorization from VirusTotal. You can also get categorization from Investigate. I want to find categorization in an open source form, but I can't seem to find that right now, a reliable source, because it's pretty much human based. People have to categorize things. So I'll find ways to remove normal. I'll create a baseline. Like I said before, I'm counting things and removing popular initially. I'll start with data from OpenDNS. So I said it's approximately 3% of the internet. So how do you find normal? Can you find it? We'll try. So what's this do? I look at this this is like some text from one of the resolvers. I just pulled 10 minutes down or something like that. It's a bunch of different stuff, different calls to different domains. But we'll try it anyways. So count how many times a domain is queried. Over 10 times, we'll write to normal traffic. Under 3, we'll write to suspicious traffic. Not that it's suspicious, but yet. But it's going to look like this. 9 minutes. Got the timestamp, a domain. So some other stuff. Because of the record type, things like that. Those are useful. This is what looks like. It's that many lines, 664,000. So it's a lot of lines in 9 minutes. When I do that, I can. Normal traffic ends up being about 250K, and suspicious is still really huge, 6.4 megabytes. I look at the normal traffic. It is kind of what I expect. Like there's a lot of Google in this little screenshot I have here. Suspicious looks. I mean, maybe it's suspicious. There's some stuff in there. There's a Russian website, winestyle.ru, which I would think is suspicious because I'm suspicious of Russian websites. But I look at it, through investigate, and it looks kind of like a normal traffic pattern. No big weird spikes. I go visit it. It's just a wine site. Doesn't mean it's not compromised. I mean, I assume every Russian website's compromised. But sorry. But anyway, so there's another site like this one, which I'm sorry it's cut off. But I go look at this one, and it was blocked by someone at my work, probably me or something, for being a dropper for Locky. But there was something in there, and I go look at it. It's a takedown page. I think that's what it says. So exactly what I expect from a Russian site. Or that wasn't Russian, that was Kazakhstan. But okay. So I thought maybe it'd be better. That's kind of labor intensive, like not me laboring, but the computer laboring to remove the count the domains and stuff. So I thought maybe I'll use the top domains list. So Alexa used to provide a top 1 million domains, top most popular at this very moment, to people for free, which is awesome. But then I think they just started charging for it. So then we at OpenDNS, Cisco, we were like, we have this data, we can do this. So now we have it and we release it to people. So there's some ways you can do it besides that too. If you like search for the most popular websites, you get a Wikipedia entry, and you could probably scrape that too, which I wouldn't really want to do. But you can also, I guess I could have talked about what I was talking about as this was going. But you can go and get the top 1 million at any time sites from this place, and it's just a CSV file. Sorry. And you can use that to compare it to your data. So doing that, it's a simple little Python bit of code, and just comparing code, and you don't have to worry about it. And this is cut off. But using that, I get two files, not in top domain and in top domain. And it changes the nature of things a little bit. And looking at the two files, I can see, there's a bunch of google.com stuff with, and on the other side, there's some interesting things, on the right side that look a little more suspicious, things that aren't as popular. So at least you can cut away some of that noise. And you still may be missing out on something, but that's as our data has been reduced. It's kind of a pointless slide. So, security categorization. This is not categorization like this person's visiting blogs. It's like this person visited malware sites, or this connection is out to botnet stuff. So unfortunately, in most cases, you have to use a third-party service at this time. But you can take that data. This is still using that OpenDNS data, and do some security categorization. So out of all that 9 minutes, there's some botnet traffic, some dynamic DNS. There's no counts here, but just so you get an idea. But there's a huge amount of blank, no categorization. You could process through that with another way. So you may need to use multiple third parties. You could also do a timeline. This is terrible, but you can kind of look at the bandwidth of it to see what's going on throughout the day or the 9 minutes. It's random data, though, from multiple sources, and sorry to put you through that. I just showed you all the data from OpenDNS for 9 minutes, so it's random. So it's kind of hard to do behavioral analysis without context. So we're going to narrow the focus. So this is from one organization. I don't remember where I got these logs, but it's lot of lines. It's like 12 hours, 24 hours. You can see it's really small, I'm sorry, but it's a whole bunch of domains in there, a lot of direct TV visits, so I could go in there and remove that stuff. Jeez, it's so annoying. I clean it up a little bit. Some of it's manual, but you can do this automatically. And I get it down to eventually having about 320 lines of domains that are suspicious. I can look at that and I can see this one has some mistakes in it, like there's a com and a dot, but I can see there's a 666 visits to Yahoo. But there's some other ones, there's like DEF CON on the very far right over there. I have a laser pointer. It takes a little while. Initially, it was a 2 gigabyte file. But then I decided I wanted to try running this on streaming data instead of taking log files and doing static stuff and just having it automatically do stuff. So I didn't have a DNS server running in my house yet that I had access to besides my router. So I ran TCP dump and I just dumped it to a file and I would look at that thing. So just on a tap, and it looks like this. It's a terrible mess. It's like you can see there are domains there, and there's timestamps. So that's what I want in this case. I can remove some things using the top domain list or removing normal in other ways, and I'm left with a bunch of, these are just the one-time visits. I can kind of scroll through that. This is kind of weird, just like a IP, and since it was TCP dump, I get IPs, it's not DNS. I can look at the amount of times I visited something. I can see there's some access to, a lot of access to private internet access, which is a VPN client or VPN service. So that might be suspicious to me if I'm not expecting it. I was expecting it because that's what I do when I'm watching myself. But and you're watching me watch myself. So I'm not sure what this can do. We can compare activity. So this is kind of rudimentary, but it's like looking at the bandwidth throughout the day of my traffic. So this is earlier in September. So it's 24 hours. You can see I'm at a concert right there. I mean, I know this. You don't know this. But you can see, like, I'm probably not home. Maybe there's less traffic. I have someone else at the house, so it messes me up a little bit. But you can see when I'm kind of at work. You can kind of make some assumptions here. When I'm home, so on and so on. There's some patterns. And if you get enough of this, you could probably find something interesting. Sorry, the color changed. I moved to a different server when I was processing through this. It's not a lot of traffic. Went out of town. Still out of town. This is a much better graph than those other crappy graphs. But I'm home right here. I'm at work right there. The time's weird. I guess I was doing nothing before that. And then I'm at a concert. I like to go to concerts. And then I was kind of pumped from the concert. There's a lot of Netflix. So you know that because I'm telling you, but maybe you'd be like, well, he didn't come home. No traffic, and then there's some traffic, a little bit, and then all of a sudden there's Netflix picks up. You can look at it in a bigger scale, and if you were to play this much faster, maybe you get a good idea of what kind of things I'm into. I mean, what kind of activity, my day-to-day internet activity, and what machines I might have on my network if I have a lot of noisy machines, things like that. So then I was like, I need to get better at this. I installed Pi-hole, which is a DNS server for Raspberry Pi. I installed it on a server and started sending all my data through that so I could get the log file in a much cleaner way. It overwrites the log every day, so I just have a cron job running, saving it to this log file. It's been doing it for about 9 months or so, and I just process it through all my stuff. So it looks like this, like in the beginning, at the top, it's cut off. It makes sense that it's cut off when you can see the whole slide, but January or maybe September, or I can't remember when it started. But and then up to, I have data in my demo that I'll show you up to yesterday. So here's the point where we save to a workable whatever. So I'm doing MongoDB. Looks like this when when you manually process it, when you just take the log file. I mean, I can do this streaming, but I show it as an example. You can just do the manual thing. So it starts sending it to different areas in the collections in the database, like domains in the top 1 million, domains not in the top 1 million, so I can break things out and separate them. And so it's like 1 was all the domains going through, 2 is in the top 1 million, and then 3 it goes a little slower. It's not in top 1 million, so it's just yeah. And that's what it kind of looks like when it's inserting into the thing. I tried some other visualization like Grafana, InfluxDB. InfluxDB is a time series database, and Grafana is cool to look at. I don't have that in my code at the moment. I actually have a function you can uncomment and you can send it to that. And then Logstash, Elasticsearch, Kibana, I need to add that to my code, but it's I've got Logstash files and stuff that will take your data and present it in cool ways, which I'll show you soon. So, and then I used Kibana to display some things, and then I decided I like to do custom stuff, which is actually kind of a little bit slower to create, but it's a fun process. So InfluxDB, I have it going into these different databases, and it kind of looks like that. You can see at the top is all the data, middle is in the top 1 million, bottom is not top 1 million, and it's over a timeline, so I can get an idea of, I mean, it's still rough, but I can get starting to get a picture of maybe what my bandwidth looks like, and you know, looking at the not top 1 million list, it kind of helps. I can see that maybe there's something going on if I want to delve a little deeper. Then I did Elasticsearch. You can do a timeline kind of thing, but you can also do cool dashboards, so you can get maps of where you're visiting, the kind of categories that you're going to, which is probably the most useful part of this. Like, what categories do I visit? So, and then the custom one, I'm auto sending and streaming data into MongoDB, and then I have Flask auto processing from MongoDB. I push into MongoDB so it's very fast. I don't have to keep processing domains over and over again with the third parties and other sources I have, and then Flask serves the content. So I can do things like this. I can look at a number of things like requests to over time, you know, and you can do a ton of cool things with D3. You can look at investigate security categories. These are like a lot of these are blacklisted versus whitelisted according to OpenDNS. So blacklisted being blocked domains. You can look at categories, podcasts, search engines, you know, software technology, etc. And you can have these automatically update with the data. You can get the VirusTotal categories. VirusTotal has a much better category engine or something. So I ended up combining both of them. If it's not found in one, it gets it from the other. And I thought this is much more interesting if you could do a time series instead of the domains you visit, of the categories that you visit. So I'm continuing to work on that, but it looks kind of like this. Small screen, sorry. So this is kind of a weird way to do it, but I can zoom in and I can look at the categories based on the time, which gives me a better indication of what kind of behavior is going on inside my network or the network I'm watching. And then initially I started with things like this, like counting things and making kind of a basic web page and doing some just like a dashboard sort of thing. That found means there were no bad domains in this specific group that I looked at. And then I started making this kind of tabular thing of data, and I've improved upon this. And I can do things like category mapping. I'll actually just show you this. Let's see here. Or, well, I'll show you like a time to domain. You can make like a forest graph. I mean, it's kind of cool. I put Grumpy Cat in there. You know, so you can see this little Grumpy Cat up there. But anyway, so you can use NetworkX to like make a forest graph. It's cool. I mean, you need a lot of data. It's not as cool, I guess. But I mean, when you get a lot of data, you get stuff like this where it's really busy. But you can kind of start to see some patterns. Just interesting ways of looking at the data. This is another way of looking like a kind of a tree map of you visited this and it's connected to all these other things. It looks like this sometimes terribly, so I wouldn't recommend doing it exactly like that. I'm finding better ways to do that. You can do just mapping, you can, if you're using third-party stuff like Investigate, and I think even VirusTotal, you can look at the places, like I mentioned earlier, the locations that are visiting the domains that you are visiting as well, which is interesting and can give you more context. So most recent stuff. Oh, I'm actually going to show you most recent stuff. So I'll just start like a Mongo database here, and then start up like a Flask stuff, and let's see. So it's not super great yet, but I've started to make it, and I'm making it so that it's available to play with, and it's a little slow at the moment. But you can do certain things like I can have this combined graph over here with the different categories of things. I can also do like this kind of thing, a timeline of it's cut off. I guess I can scroll over. That's good. Okay, so I can kind of hover over things and see there's a bad domain visited on this date, bad domain on this date, good domains all this time, and neutral domains that aren't really classified as anything. Then I can break it down to not in the top domain list or in a certain count of domains, etc. And let's see, like I can look at like a better kind of mapping thing. And I can, if it was bad, it would see a little red dot. Maybe you expect that in your network that people are only going to visit domains inside a certain geolocation, and they're also visiting a lot of them in China for some reason, or IPs or something that might indicate some kind of strange behavior. Let's see what this is. So you can do like categorization, and this is kind of a mess. I need to fix this. I'm sorry, just didn't have time. It's all squished together, but it shows you the category is like the most of what's been visited, and separating those different groups and things like that. This is that terrible graphic that I showed you before, but you can do it a different way, which is maybe cleaner, like this. You can kind of drill down into the categories, and that's all squished together too. So I got to fix that. But and then you can also just search things, or look at the investigate status in this case, things that are considered bad. So or you can look it up using various tools. Like you can change these URLs to go to other places. I have them looking up things inside Investigate. You can get information on the IP or the ASN. You can get a location from Google Maps if you want a specific location of that thing, and its category. And I'm going to be adding the content, the kind of category. This is the security category, but I need to add the actual this. This is this kind of thing. This is like a blog or something. Let's see. I actually have there's some other stuff that, it's kind of out of order with the slides, but I'll show you this. So using network traffic captures, maybe you want to pull some stuff from malware traffic analysis and play with it. So you can do that with Python, and I've had that out there too. You grab the HTTP traffic and generate statistics. So maybe you have packet capture and you look at it, look at all the HTTP in Wireshark, and you can see, follow a stream. This is this kind of slow way to do things, the way that analysts often work. You can see there's someone posted in clear text email, username, and a password. But if you could just process through these PCAPs and create some graphs and create some list of all the gets and the posts, and you can start watching for certain specific kind of activity in that stuff. So in this case, the gets or the posts, maybe I just want to highlight those. You do Active Directory logs. So I initially started, I'm just doing successful versus failed logins. I started with this, but then I actually have a better looking demo, which I'll show you. So I've got, I have this, I'll show you this first. It's kind of small text, but here's what the audit lines look like. I took my Active Directory logs from this source I got and got out just the account logged off, logged on, account failed to log on, things like that. And I processed through it with this Python script. And it doesn't give me any output, but let's see, when I look at it, I can do things like this. I can see like kind of the pattern throughout that time, which is useful because if you get a lot of failed logins, at a time you shouldn't get failed logins, or you can customize it however you need to be, and you can get some idea of what's going on quickly. Additionally, I have we try it with like auth logs, so this is just session open, close, logins to a server I have out there. Let's see. So and you can kind of do the same thing. You can see like invalid SSH login attempts, which could be useful too. And I'm doing this manually, but of course you can have it streaming. And then I'll show you one more. So client connection analysis. I was thinking if you have a bunch of data and you want to separate your traffic from the clients into their own time series, it could be useful. So say I have a file here like I got this from Infoblox, and looks like this. I modified the data. This sample is actually up on the GitHub, so you can play with it if you want. But I have like 4 or 5 clients, which you can see like here's a client right here, and I have the place they visited. Well, you get the idea, and some other stuff like time series data. If I want to separate those, I can do like. This one actually gives me some output. So it processes the data, and it gives me this. Sorry about this. Gives me these JSON files, and when you open this up, you can get kind of a list of or a display of what they look like. There's a lot of similarities in traffic patterns. You can see just looking at this, but there are differences, and there's more for one versus the other. So that can be pretty interesting too, if combined with a dashboard. So I think I show that stuff. That's what I just did. Now I wrote a lot of code for this. It was a mess. It's still a mess, but I've cleaned it up a little bit. I mean, I've cleaned up quite a bit. I've really commented it heavily. But this is how you do it. Everyone brute forces their way through code. Oh, I do. But it's better than that. If you want to mess with it, you want to play with it, it shouldn't be too hard. So it's not a perfect solution. I mean, my stuff is certainly not a perfect solution, but it's an attempt. I mean, I've been analyzing all sorts of things for so long, and I just want to stop, but I don't want to stop my job. I want to keep working, So there's. You just got. I'm just part of the battle. We're all supposed to build this thing out. Intrusion detection, like IDS and AV, and especially user awareness. Not that really helps all the time. They still have their place. Analyzing behavior, it can decrease the amount of work you have to do, which is great because Reddit keeps going. So there's always something to do. It can provide more visibility, at least. It can give you quick visibility into what looks like a jumbled mess. And hopefully, I know it's going to alert us all to anomalies eventually. There are companies out there doing this. It's a big thing. But if you don't want to be watched, just a little thing. Use a VPN. People will see that you're using a VPN, but it might be suspicious. Use your own DNS server and send it through that VPN, things like that. You can learn a lot about who you're watching. I think I took it out, but I had a interesting display of the interesting sites that may or may not have been visited at my house, but so anyway, you can get all the code here. It's github.com/jpyorre, my last name, and this behavioral analysis at the bottom. So, do you have any questions? You can also contact me through email, through whatever, and if you want help, or if you want to like program together, I don't know. It's I actually love looking at log files and looking at streams and stuff. So, and I love finding ways not to look at them.
No questions. Oh, no, you didn't.
All right. Cool.
Okay, nothing with Splunk.
I have done stuff with Splunk. Like I said, trying to do free things. But I've done lots of stuff with Splunk. Splunk's great. But currently I don't have access to any kind of Splunk. So I should, but I don't. So my...
Yeah, 500 meg for the free one is kind of... Yeah. I think it's a 500 meg per day limit for free.
And that's like
and
nothing.
DNS is probably going to blow that out.
Oh, yeah, and really quick.
But maybe you can pre-filter.
Yeah. Splunk is great. I mean, but you can... If you know your log stash well, you can do some really good stuff with Kibana. So, yeah. Oh.
Get a workout.
Have you done any work with NetFlow analysis or anything similar?
Yeah, I've used commercial products like QRadar for NetFlow analysis, and I need to do more with that. Not with QRadar, but with my stuff. I mean, I've sorted some stuff like with the. I barely touched on it, but I know it's really important. I need to work on that because it's awesome stuff. Yeah.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, thank you very much. That
Thank
was
you.
really awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.